Hello, wise humans. This is Cynthia Sue Larson with RealityShifters.com, talking with you today about receiving the best of what nature offers and expanding the human umwelt. So, what is the human umwelt? That may be an unfamiliar term. Okay, fair enough. It comes from the field of biosemiotics, which is the study of symbology and meaning within biological systems. And umwelt is a word describing the way that organisms of a particular species uniquely perceive and experience the world through their sensory filters. And what I mean by that is a human experience is different than that of a bat that flies around at night and uses echolocation and sonar to figure out where it is, and it sees through that very different form of sensory participation with the world rather than what humans are doing. And if we look at the work of Donald Hoffman, who I've interviewed on Living the Quantum Dream podcast, he's also been a guest with the International Mandela Effect Conference. We talked with him as well about his idea that basically all of our senses are coming through the equivalent of like desktop icons on our computer. So if, for example, if you're throwing a file away on your computer, you put it in the trash, and that's very symbolic. It's not actually what the computer is doing at all. It's a human interface. Our senses, such as sight, sound, taste, touch, and everything, those are interfaces to the true reality. So every species is going to see things rather differently. And that means that hard science may be not just susceptible to interpretation, but potentially open to some big changes as we recognize that reality is much more than just what humans are observing. If you're wondering what are the range of experiences, well, here we go. This is a chart showing at the top all of the different species. So this is the biological system of the family tree of life: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And those are kind of arbitrary delineations and categories, and like, where do you draw the line? That's arbitrary. So it's arbitrary at every step of the journey. So basically, someone's just saying, okay, we're going to sort this out. So that's how we end up with plants being different than animals, and so on and so forth. But actually, we're just one part of one big family tree. But the eyes on a tree might be in the leaves, or this bush behind me is probably seeing me with those leaves. I use my eyes. Bats use that echolocation. We're all very different. And even within ourselves, when I get to know myself, because you might think, okay, let's just start by knowing ourselves. Let's keep it simple. Good idea. But even when it's simple, you'll notice you might have three brains. I've got this brain in my head, which is known as the cephalic brain. There's a heart brain, cardiac brain. And then in the gut, there's the enteric brain. These are literally brains with groups of neurons functioning where you can actually have cognitive decision making occurring at each of these levels. And so we are a multitude, we humans. We also notice we've got chakra systems. And if you think, well, that's pretty far out, this whole idea that there's crown chakra, third eye chakra, the Anya, throat chakra, and so on and so forth. Sounds complicated, right? But it gets even weirder when you look at recent research. There are researchers in Switzerland who were noticing that humans apparently think in up to 11 dimensions. These are researchers looking at the mathematics and the way of analyzing human cognition and decision making in sort of a mathematical computational model. And as they did that, they noticed some astonishing results, including a revelation that while cells throughout the human body typically work in 4 dimensions, that would be our 3 dimensions of X, Y, Z, height, width, and depth. There's the 4th of time, of course. The human brain routinely operates in 7 dimensions, and sometimes up to 11 dimensions. So this entire higher dimensional process happens really quickly, like in a flash. And it happens as soon as an appropriate stimulus arrives. So researcher, mathematician Ran Levi was noticing, I should also include one more thing. These structures that are being formed in the simulation they were doing of groupings of neurons, as they added more dimensions, they were observed to go into something they called a cavity. sort of like they would gather around this high-dimensional hole, like a donut hole, and that's when these, I'm going to now remark on what the researcher said. Rand Levi stated, the appearance of high-dimensional cavities when the brain is processing information means that the neurons in the network react to stimuli in an extremely organized manner. It is as if the brain reacts to a stimulus by building and then raising or destroying a tower of multidimensional blocks, starting with one-dimensional rods, then two-dimensional planks, then three-dimensional cubes, and then more complex geometries with 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, and so on. Once the brain processes the information, the clique and cavity, the gathering, and then the hole that it's gathering around, vanished. These multidimensional appearing, disappearing so-called sandcastles may help provide a clue to one of the biggest mysteries of brain functionality. Where and how do we store our memories? Neuroscientist Henry Markram, who is also working on this Blue Brain project, along with Rand Levi and the others, he speculates the memories may be hiding in high-dimensional cavities. So we don't see them. It's not like there's some place in the brain where the memories are all stored. They come and they go, and they're very high-dimensional. And if you're wondering what does that look like, I printed that off too. Here we've got a picture of various structures. So if you look at the simplest one, this here is a 2D simplex, which looks like a triangle. Then you've got a 3D simplex, which looks kind of like a square or something. Then here's a 4D, 5D, 6D, and 7D. And you can see the complexity increases as the dimensionality increases. And that's what's happening inside the brains. And so the researchers are amazed both at the fact that humans appear to be thinking in 11 dimensions, which, by the way, is what some of the physicists had been hypothesizing that reality is operating in order for quantum physics to line up with the large physics of the relational theory. So it's basically working with cosmic physics at the planetary scale, big scale, down to the very, very tiny scale of quantum physics. Looks like we need 11 dimensions to make that happen. Good news, humans seem to be thinking in 11 dimensions. Okay, I'm going to continue because this gets really interesting now to me, because I see that this pattern may be seen on larger scales, like where certain organizations, for example, exist as long as they're needed, and then they get dissolved like those sandcastles once the collective has grasped essential ideas and information. So how can we tell whether there may be some truth to this idea that effectively we're in some sort of a reality bubble? That's this whole idea of like how humans see the world, this Umwelt word that we were talking about earlier. How do we know that's going on? Well, we can look and exchange and relate with other Umwelts. So how do we do that? I've been blessed and fortunate to experience an equine guided educational center in Santa Rosa, which is the very one and the same that Melinda Iverson Inn visited last year when she interviewed the owner and the operator of that training facility at Casari Ranch in Santa Rosa, Ariana Strozzi Mizuki. So you should check that out if you get a chance. It's Wisdom Keepers of Earth, and that's Melinda Iverson Inn interviewing Ariana, and it's at the horse ranch there. And what's so interesting about this, you may wonder, well, what can we learn from a horse? You can learn a lot from a horse. The whole idea of equine guided education is that instead of telling the animal what to do from the human point of view, you instead get to know a one-on-one relationship with that horse. And in that process, discover what you're bringing, you the human. So if for example, a human has just gotten off a bad day at work, they show up at the horse ranch, they want to just jump on and ride the horse, and then they're surprised. Why does the horse act so weird? Why is it getting away from me? Why won't it let me jump on top on the saddle? Why can't I ride this horse? And a lot has to do with the energy that we're bringing to everything we do. Humans, as a rule, don't seem to notice that we're constantly broadcasting everything we're thinking at all these brain levels, head, heart, and gut. We're constantly on. We're like little radio broadcasting units. And if we don't become aware of what we're doing, we can't even listen and learn from other plants and animals. So this is the opportunity of spending time in nature. You could do it just sitting outside in a garden like what I'm doing right now, or you could have the opportunity to take a class where you get some hands-on training at how to relate to a whole other umwelt of the horse. And it's pretty exciting and wonderful. I can vouch for that, having been there. And anyway, so what if life is this whole exchange of, various umwelts coming together? What if it is this dream that I've been writing about in all my books ever since I started 25 years or so ago? Exactly. Well, if it is a dream, which it seems to be, and if each of us has an umwelt, which is our personal worldview, specific to our own unique mindset, and then our cultural one from our culture, and then one from being a human, and then what happens when we expand it? Well, that's where how good can it get comes in as that question I love to ask. Because when you start asking that question and expanding your umwelt, your worldview, you open up to a whole new reality, which is much wilder and weirder and more wonderful than you might ever have thought. Because in that reality, you start to realize that you really are the consciousness observing you, the physical being, having this physical experience. You are the one who's awake within the dream, whether you're asleep or awake in waking life. And you are the one who can start relating to others in meaningful ways, having meaningful relationships with nature, with the plants, with the animals, with the people, and with the other beings that have non-human consciousness, non-human intelligence all around. And this definitely is the time for it right now. So it's a time, one thing people learn when they go to that horse ranch is they notice if they're anxious. They notice what I talked about in my most recent video and blog last month, that it's important to go beyond fight or flight, get calm, even if you have to freeze and just be still to get into that flow state. Once you're in the flow state, then you can start this process that I'm describing today, expanding and opening into it and recognizing what's going on around you. And like I recognized a couple months ago when I was recording one of these videos, having trouble with technical issues, and a wild squirrel came right up to me because I was taking 3 hours to record a 10-minute video. And this little wild squirrel, she could tell that through my umwelt, I'm sure, I'm broadcasting this, trying to keep asking how good can it get, but obviously I'm stressed. So she showed up and frolicked at my foot as if she was my pet, trying to cheer me up, like, hey, look, I'm here doing little somersaults for you. I'm just being cute and adorable for you right next to your foot. And then she cavorted off. And like I said, I was out there for 3 hours out here in the garden. I think it was February. Anyway, she came back again, and this time there was a branch right next to me. She was hanging off the branch as close to me as she could get, just cheerfully looking at me like, hello, are you still needing cheering up? And yes, I was. So that's how good it can get. These are some of the gifts nature can bring. When you need something, nature will bring it. And it may come through in surprising ways because all of nature is listening. The rhododendron behind me is listening and watching through the eyes of the leaves. Everything's aware. So until next time, keep asking my favorite question, how good can it get? And let's find out together. Love you so much.